Today the class is acid properties. So acid actually is an acronym or an abbreviation. So A stands for atomicity, C stands for consistency, and I stands for isolation, and D stands for durability. Now missed somewhere your notes is there. Wait 1 second. Okay, before starting the concept of acid properties, okay, yeah, transaction. I already given a brief session on what is transaction, what are the states of your transaction. Suppose I am taking in a database. Okay, a database is there. In this database, there are different transactions we are going to apply on this database. Who will do all this transaction? There are different kinds of different kinds of users will do different kinds of transactions, and each and every transaction will have the instructions. So when a user is performing different kinds of transactions on a particular database, the database is able to be in a consistent state, and it should have to give the same response to the transaction T1 of user 1, transaction T2 of user 2, or transaction 3 of user 3. So if your database should be like this, it has to give the same response to the same user if you are doing in a single transaction or if you are doing the multiple transaction. That transaction should have to consist the property of the acid properties. I am not saying the database should consist of acid properties. The transaction should has to satisfy, or it has to have the properties of your acid properties. So here I am only concentrating what the transaction should have an atomicity, how a transaction could persist the isolation property, how a transaction could persist the durability and consistent property. So I'm telling that clearly, I'm mentioning that how your transaction should satisfy acid properties. If your transactions will have a proper consistency, atomicity, isolation, durability, automatically your database is also in a proper state or consistent state. Okay, so let's we so first we will discuss the first property is called as your atomicity property. Atomicity property I already covered in the part 1 of my section, but again I want to give in a clarity on that. Atomicity is nothing but, for the same example I am taking for sake of convenience, in my previous class I taken a transaction T1. In the transaction T1, how many instructions are going to executed? 50 instructions are going to executed. If any failure occurs, suppose a failure occurs at an instruction I20, what my atomicity property is there? Suppose if you are starting to execute all the transactions of the T1, if any failure occur, you have to be roll back and again you have to start. You can't say that I20 up to I19 I was accessed properly, this transaction is over. I can't say like that. So what atomicity is proper? Either if you want to make successful your transaction active or committed, then you have to make accessed all from I1 instruction to I50 or none. Nothing but, if atomicity, what atomicity property is telling that either all instructions are just executed or none of the instruction has to be executed. But I can't say बीच में 20 instruction का हो जा पूरा हो गया, after 1 day, after 2 days I will continue from the 21 instruction. I can't say like that. If you are doing like that, the database never get the consistent state. Okay, what at every transaction has to executed all the instructions, or none of the instruction has to be executed. That atomicity is property is telling that whether you have to do all the instructions has to be either none of the instructions. Okay, and atomicity, this is your atomicity property. And next I am going to the isolation. I will tell the consistency at last. Okay, next I am going with the isolation property. Isolation, what an isolation property is saying? Nothing but, see, deep a database में different लोग आ जाता है, different transaction उन्होंने करता. So how database should be is giving a response is nothing but, suppose a person A is there, a person B is there. A is doing the same work and B is also doing the same work, but A is doing the work in a single transaction. Suppose B is doing the same task is in the multiple transactions. So when A is doing the transaction on database, particular database, whatever the response is giving to the A with the single transaction, and the same operation when B is doing, the same response has to be to the same response has been given to the B. It does not bother about how these transactions are. A single transaction here it is equal to 10 transaction, but the same output. Suppose if you are getting the output over A plus B over here, the same output here we are getting the A plus C. That is the concept of your isolation. Isolation property is telling that when multiple transactions of multiple users are doing on the same database, the database has to give the same response to the different kinds of the users. Suppose you take in a railway system. Suppose when suppose you are going to the counter and you are taking a ticket at the same point of time, in different kinds of cities they are using the same railway database. Okay. There's nothing but I can what an Indian railway is telling that at the same point of time it is going to give the response at 1 lakh users. It is going to give the same response. That is the Indian railway as in capacity. Okay. So how your database has to be there, nothing but when multiple transactions are working on your database, it should not be collision between the transactions. So how much response you are giving to the A and the same response has to be given to the B. This is the property of the isolation. Simply I can say that if one person is doing if one person is using the database and at the same time another person is using the database cannot be say that hey, you just wait, T1 is doing, after T1 you have to take nothing. But if it is saying like that, how much time it will take? Suppose you simple, this is a simple example, try to understand. Suppose you are going in a ATM, SBI ATM, you are withdrawing the money. When you are withdrawing the money in other ATMs also, is everybody stopped to take their money? No. If you are taking in some Amirpet branch, some other person is taking at Panjagutta branch, some other person is taking at the Dilshangar branch. Is the server is our database is telling that to stop your transaction? No. So this is the best example I can give for the isolation property. I hope so. When multiple transactions are executing on the same database, it does not happen to be any collision, and it is no need that after one transaction is completed, then other transaction has to be started. This is a logical isolation. It's not the physical isolation we are talking. Yeah, database has capability where it will finish the one transaction, it will go to the next transaction, but there is should not be the collision between the transaction and the transaction when you are performing the same operation. I'm telling specifically, I'm telling when you are doing the same operation, it does not be the collision between the different kinds of transaction with the different kinds of the users. I hope you all understand. And next I'm coming to the durability. This is a simple with hmm, suppose I am taken a transaction I initialized an value to the transaction 10. After some time I updated that value, and my value of I is going to be 20. Suppose when my question is, when I'm changing the value from 10 to 20, these whether this update is permanently stored in the database? Yes, because okay, when it is going to be stored 20, when the transaction should consist the property called as a durability. Suppose after, okay, it was updated my value from 10 to 20. After 10 days, after 10 days something failure occurs. Suppose your system failure occurs, some hardware failure or software failure. After recovering of that failure also, you want to check your I value. Now you tell me whether your I value is 10 or 20. No, your I value should be 20. Nothing. What durability is property is telling, whatever the changes you are doing to the database has to be made, that changes should be permanently even failures occurs. That is the property going to tell by the durability property. And I think in the previous um, PG entrance examination in high level, or after in your PG class also it may useful. They may ask that question like this: which is the DBMS component it is going to be help to your atomicity property, that is nothing but your transaction management, because atomicity or whatever the things we are working, that is purely on the transactions. Okay, and the same, what is the component which is useful, the property of the durability, the durability property is going to work, is going to be accessed with the component of the recovery management. And coming to the isolation property, the isolation property is going to be work with your concurrency control techniques. So different kinds of techniques will be there for different type, all for all these properties. And the last and final, this is the hero of your asset properties, that is the consistency. uh, you know the meaning of the consistency, nothing but everything has to be done perfectly, even if it is a multiple transaction. It, suppose I'm taking in a database, okay, I'm taking in a database one, I'm taking in a database two. For example, you take that there is a person calling A want to transfer some data to the B, or A want to give some money 100 to and to the B. So the transaction. So when I am doing transaction, before doing the transaction, these are in consistent state. When I am doing a particular transaction, also these databases should be in the consistent state, that is a property called as a consistency. So suppose I debited amount from the database one, and after debiting I have to give to the database too. When I'm debiting and I'm performing the update operation, the update operation must be taken by the DB2. Then only I can say that this entire cycle will be in the consistent state. Simply I can say that before starting your transaction, these databases are consistent. And when you are applying the particular transaction, after completing the transactions also, the database should be in a consistent state. Suppose if it is not like that, then I can say that this transaction does not missing some properties of your asset. And when you will get the consistency, nothing but why I'm telling the last, when a transaction will have an atomicity property, when I'm having an isolation property, when it is having a durability property, automatically the transaction is going to be hold the property called as in a consistent state. So this is the topic of your asset properties. I hope you all are understood, and if you are not understood also, no problem, you can do comment, and I will reply to your comments. Okay, thanks for listening. Stay home, stay safe.